Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are tackling something huge, analyzing the Indo-Pacific. I mean, this region is all anyone talks about in global strategy, but we're going to push past the usual stuff, the naval movements and the big diplomatic speeches.
Right.
Our goal is to dive into the nuts and bolts, the spreadsheets, the people, to really understand the institutional governance and the massive shifts in human migration that are completely shaking things up.
That's absolutely right. When you look at the stack of sources for this, two big stories really jump out.
Okay.
The first is a really rigorous look at the institutional frameworks. So how do nations like Japan, Australia, India, how do they actually fund themselves? We're comparing things like, the autonomy of their tax agencies, their governance structures.
And the second story.
The second story is intensely human. It's about the dramatic, really rapid policy shifts in key economies. We're talking Japan, Australia, to attract and retain global talent.
And what we found, and this is what's so fascinating, is that the difference between, success and failure in this regional competition often comes down to the fine print.
Exactly.
Whether a country gives its tax agency full autonomy to fight corruption, or whether it includes temporary residence in its healthcare, these seemingly abstract policy details, they immediately impact millions of lives.
And billions in revenue. It's the institutional wiring that really dictates the day-to-day reality.
So let's start with the phrase itself, Indo-Pacific. It feels like a very modern kind of military term, but it's actually layered with meaning.
It is. In its narrowest sense, and I think its most beautiful sense, it's a biogeographic term.
Okay, what does that mean?
It refers to the tropical waters connecting the Indian and the Central and Western Pacific Oceans. It's famous globally for just exceptionally high species richness. The Coral Triangle is right there in the middle of it.
So an ecological term first.
Centuries old, yeah. But the modern geopolitical usage is much, much broader. It spans all the nations and islands that surround both of those oceans.
And for strategic purposes?
For strategic purposes, the ASEAN countries are generally seen as the geographical heart of this massive political region.
But hold on, who actually came up with that name? Because the sources show it isn't new at all. It has this fascinating and frankly kind of ironic origin story.
It really does. The term actually originated in Weimar, Germany, back in the 1920s.
Weimar, Germany.
Yeah, a political geographer named Karl Haushofer, he envisioned the Indo-Pacific as this future anti-colonial alliance between India and China.
An alliance against whom?
Specifically directed against what he called Euro-America.
Wow. That is a stark contrast to how we use it now.
A complete reversal.
Today, the term is almost symbolically linked with the quadrilateral security dialogue.
Right. Australia, Japan, India, and the U.S. So when the U.S. frames its strategy as a free and open Indo-Pacific, well, you can see why Beijing might view that, given the history, as a pretty clear containment strategy.
And that strategic alignment, it quickly translates into economic initiatives.
It does. The U.S. launched the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity, or IPEF, in 2022.
And this thing is massive.
It's huge. Partners like Australia, Japan, India are all in, and collectively they represent something like 40% of global GDP.
And the IPEF isn't. Well, it's not your typical free trade agreement. It's more of a governance project.
That's a great way to put it. It's built around these four big pillars. You have the connected economy, which is about digital rules, the resilient economy for supply chains.
Okay.
Then there's the clean economy decarbonization goals. And finally, the fair economy, which is all about fighting corruption and strengthening tax compliance. It's trying to manage everything.
Which brings us to the money. Managing that scope requires cash, and cash requires effective tax collection. And here we saw a really stark divide in the sources. You've got developed economies like Australia and New Zealand, where historically tax collection rates are well above 25% of GDP?
And that's in sharp contrast with a lot of developing economies. Even heavyweights like India and Indonesia, where collection rates can hover down around the 10% mark.
But the institutional difference is what's really interesting here, beyond just the percentages.
Right. It all comes down to one word: autonomy.
Autonomy. Okay, tell us why giving a tax agency autonomy is like the secret sauce for an efficient economy.
Well, it's crucial. When you look at the organizational structure, autonomy means the tax body is protected from political interference.
So they can actually do their job.
They can actually do their job. It lets them manage their own budget, set their own staffing levels, handle their own organization, even negotiate pay. They can be flexible and impartial, which is vital when you're pursuing, say, a large corporation or some politically connected person.
And that creates a huge divide. You have Australia, New Zealand, Singapore. Their revenue bodies are classified as highly autonomous.
Exactly. They have authority over all those key management areas, so they can react really quickly to economic shifts.
And on the other side,
you have jurisdictions like Cambodia and Myanmar, where the tax agency is just another directorate inside the Ministry of Finance.
so no real power.
Little to no independent authority. And that lack of autonomy is a major factor in the staggering levels of tax arrears we see in some of these developing nations.
How bad is it?
Unpaid taxes can easily exceed 20% of net collections. It shows you how political structure directly, it just torpedoes financial stability.
So high autonomy equals better governance, better revenue, which is absolutely essential to fund all the other rapid changes happening.
Especially the changes driven by people, by migration.
Right, let's pivot to the people defining this future. Japan. Historically, one of the world's most closed nations, just a tiny foreign population ratio. But in 2019, they just completely reversed course. A pivotal policy shift. Now actively welcoming labor across almost all skill levels.
The change is breathtakingly fast. I mean, as of mid-2024, Japan had nearly 3.6 million foreign residents. And they are projecting massive annual growth. They expect to attract 300,000 to 400,000 new people every single year.
And the good news for them is that they are exceptionally good at keeping them.
They really are. Their international student retention rate is 40%, which is higher than a lot of European OECD countries.
But the most significant finding is the pipeline, right?
The pipeline is key. Over half of all the highly skilled professionals who arrived between 2011 and 2019, they initially came to Japan as international students.
It's a brilliant try before you buy strategy.
It really is. It shows that if you create that initial pathway through education, you have a much, much higher chance of converting that talent into permanent professional residents.
Although it does depend heavily on where they come from.
Right. The data is interesting. Vietnamese professionals show a really high retention rate, around 71%. But for Indian professionals, the rate is significantly lower, closer to 27%.
Now let's talk about the low-skilled side, because this is where Japan is, well, globally unique.
Completely unique. They have these two massive systems, TITP and SSW, to bring in low to medium skilled workers.
And the key difference is something called the specified skilled worker, or SSW Type 2 status.
That Type 2 status is the game changer. It signals Japan's long-term intent.
How so?
It allows for long-term stays, it lets them bring their families, and eventually it provides a pathway to permanent residency. They aren't treating this labor as temporary, they see them as future citizens.
But if they're so focused on attracting this workforce, why do the sources show that the system relies on these intermediaries, these supervising organizations that cause 55% of trainees to go into debt?
Yeah.
I mean, an average of over 500,000 Japanese yen in fees before they even arrive. That seems totally counterproductive.
It is. It's the dark side of the information asymmetry in these global low-skilled labor markets.
Yeah, what do these organizations do?
They're meant to connect foreign labor suppliers with Japanese companies that need workers, but they often act as these really powerful gatekeepers. The fees reflect the intense global supply-demand imbalance and the cost of navigating these complex international systems. It forces many workers into debt before they even set foot in the country.
Okay, so let's shift focus to Australia, another Indo-Pacific powerhouse that is just completely reliant on migration. Australia's permanent program is overwhelmingly prioritized toward the skill stream. There's a very clear national strategy to fill labor gaps.
And their sourcing really reflects those deep regional ties. In the 2022-23 data, India, the PRC, and Nepal accounted for almost 43% of all the skill stream visas.
And what jobs are they filling?
Well, looking at the occupations they need in regional areas, it highlights some very practical needs. Accountants, chefs, and motor mechanics are the top three. This is about plugging immediate economic gaps.
Now, when we look at how they integrate into the labor market, the data shows that migrants are more vulnerable to economic shocks.
They are. They saw higher peak unemployment rates during crises like the 2009 global financial crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic compared to Australian-born citizens.
That said, The long-term human capital dividend seems undeniable.
Oh, absolutely. The children of migrants, the second generation, they show just phenomenal educational success. They are 2.3 to 3.7 times more likely to have a postgraduate qualification than Australian-born children of Australian-born parents.
That's a massive injection of high-value human capital into the next generation.
It really is.
But it creates an interesting paradox. Even with that dramatically higher level of education, the overall employment rates for the children of migrants hover around 80%, which is similar to the Australian-born group.
Right. The postgraduate degree doesn't automatically guarantee a better employment rate.
But it must translate into something.
It does. It certainly translates into higher skilled employment and much better earnings profiles overall.
Which brings us to where policy really meets daily life: healthcare. This is where we can see the operational contrast between these two migration powerhouses.
It's a stunning example. Their approaches to temporary resident healthcare are, well, they're diametrically opposed.
Japan is extraordinarily generous. Their national health insurance is available even to short-term temporary residents. We're talking students, people on business visas.
Even people on homestays. It's viewed as providing medical care that is, and this is a quote, unparalleled in the world.
It's a huge magnet for talent.
A huge magnet. But that generosity comes at a cost. It leads to financial strain and rising concerns over abuse of the system.
And Australia took the exact opposite path.
The complete opposite path, and they did it decades ago. They used to include working holiday and student visa holders in Medicare.
Okay.
But they phased that out about 30 years ago, precisely because of the financial strain from rapidly increasing immigrant numbers. Now, Medicare is strictly for citizens and permanent residents.
That difference is absolutely key for anyone thinking about relocating. And these policy decisions become part of the global competition for talent. Because while we're focusing on the Indo-Pacific, Japan and Australia are competing globally.
They absolutely are. And when you look at what drives global relocation for families, even outside this immediate region, the priorities are always the same.
Affordability, safety.
Right. Access to good education and universal health care. The fastest growing destinations globally, places like Canada and parts of Europe, are prioritizing those exact same factors.
So if Canada's universal healthcare is a major draw for global talent, then Japan's exceptionally generous system serves as a powerful regional benchmark.
And Australia's much stricter policy puts a lot more pressure on new arrivals to figure that out for themselves.
And the institutional governance we talked about at the start, the ability to actually fund these services, that's the hinge on which future retention is going to swing.
Exactly.
So we've covered two parallel stories today. First, the structured governance and the financial mechanics that fund the entire region.
And second, the massive human flows that are defining its future workforce.
We saw that institutional strength, like tax autonomy, is absolutely key to stability.
And the key takeaway here is that success creates immediate, intense systemic pressure. Both Japan and Australia are succeeding wildly at attracting and retaining talent. And that includes low-skilled workers who intend to stay permanently through systems like that SSW Type 2 visa. But this influx of people puts immense stress on the very social infrastructure that makes these countries attractive in the first place.
The infrastructure financed by those tax systems we discussed.
Precisely.
So we'll leave you with this provocative final thought. Given the high retention rates of both skilled and low-skilled workers in these major Indo-Pacific destination countries, and the strong preference for permanent residency that migrants are demonstrating, what fundamental changes must these regional governments make to critical social services, like Japan's currently unparalleled but financially straining healthcare system, to sustain this rapid, high-retention population growth over the next decade?
It's a question of growth versus governmental